that I had a more aesthetically pleasing background to give you guys for this book video, but this is just the reality of moving. We have furniture absolutely everywhere that does not belong in this apartment, but it is what it is. I'm super excited for today's video. I'm going to be sharing with you guys the 58 books that I've read so far this year. That is a lot of books, a lot of words, a lot of pages, a lot of chapters. I honestly am not really sure how I managed to read 58 books this year, but I somehow did it, and now I'm going to share them with you guys. How I decided to break up this video, and I have it all listed out, because if you think that I can memorize every single book, its ratings, its category, its review, you think too highly of me. Basically, we're going to be going through every single book that I've read this year. I'll be giving you guys the title, the author, what genre I think it falls under, and my rating, and then a really quick review. I'm not going to go in depth about what these books are about. I will have every single book listed in the description of this video, so if you want to check any of them out, like if any reviews intrigue you or the covers of these books intrigue you, then you can check them out and check out the description on your own. But if I read the description of every single book that I've read this year, we would be here for several hours, and nobody has time for that. You can look it up on your own, but I'm gonna give you as much information as I possibly can. Also keep in mind that with every review that I give, every rating that I give, it's just my opinion. I know people can get defensive about certain books. I rated certain books lower than what other people rated them. I rated them higher than what other people rated them. Everyone has their own opinion, own differences when it comes to books, so let's be respectful in the comments, huh? Also, not every single book that I'm going to be sharing with you guys I have in paperback. I tend to get rid of a lot of books that I didn't like, so a lot of the books that I rated 3 stars or below, I don't even have anymore. I do have some random 2-star books, but just because they go with a collection and stuff like that. So not every single book that's going to be on this list I'm going to be able to hold up in paperback, and if not, I'll just pop it up on the screen so you guys can still see what the cover looks like. But just wanted to give that quick disclaimer because I don't know, I just felt the need to give that disclaimer. First book that I read this year that is arguably the worst book that I've read this year. I'm so sorry, Colleen Hoover stands, but Layla is gonna come in dead last for me. I truly don't even know what category this would fall into. It's like ghost story, romance, thriller, horror. I have no clue. I also just don't even care because I did not like this book at all. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. By far one of the strangest books that I've ever read. I don't even think it's giving it away, but basically the main character falls in love with a ghost, and it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder from there. So I just wasn't a fan. I love all of Colleen Hoover's other books, or the majority of them at least, but this one was just out of pocket and very odd in my opinion. Next book that is the second worst book that I've read this year, unfortunately. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars. It is Invisible Girl by Lisa Jewell. I'm really sad because I've read Lisa Jewell's other books and I loved them. I think that I have them in this list, so you guys are going to hear them a little bit later on. But this book just did not do it for me whatsoever. It's like a mystery thriller book for those of you that are not familiar with her writing. She always writes mystery thriller, I'm pretty sure. I basically almost DNF'd this book 4 or 5 times, but I was just waiting for the plot twist because I know how her books work and I know how good her other books are, and for some reason the plot twist just never arrived in this book. It just did not show up. It was absent from this entire book. I just wasn't a fan. Love her writing, love her other books, but this one was not it for me. Next book I don't have a physical copy of because I actually gave it away because I did not like it at all, and that is The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict. This is a historical fiction book. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, this was my own fault for picking up a historical fiction book because I don't enjoy reading historical fiction, but every now and then I think that I like to retest book genres that I don't typically like and see if maybe I'll like them a few months later or this time around, and I didn't. Shocker. I think my issue with this book is that I was expecting more of a storyline and a story behind who the main character was as a person, her upbringing, her life in New York, but instead the entire book was about books and libraries, which Personal Librarian, okay, maybe the title kind of gives that away. I was just expecting more out of the book and it didn't deliver. Next book is The Wife Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This is a mystery fiction book. I wouldn't even call it a thriller. It's just kind of a general fiction book with like a little bit of mystery in it, and I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. This was actually a Kindle Unlimited book, so if you guys have Kindle, you can check it out on there if you're interested. You want to challenge my rating, go for it. I just thought the storyline was overall super boring, and the plot twists weren't that good either. I just wanted the story to be over with, to be completely honest, so wasn't for me. Next book that I read was We Are All the Same in the Dark by Julia Heberlin. I probably just butchered her last name. This was a thriller. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. I 100% would have DNF'd this book and just not finished it if I hadn't been reading it for a book club. But because I was reading it for a book club, I had a little bit more motivation to finish it, to see if 1, it got any better, 2, I just wanted to be able to relate to people that actually finished the book. So I did, in fact, finish it, but I wasn't surprised by the ending. I thought the whole book was super, super slow, and I just did not like it overall. Was not for me. Next book is The Ninth House by Alex Stern. This is a fantasy book. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I'm pretty sure this is the first book in a new series that Alex Stern has started writing. I know that like with fantasy books, you kind of have to give more than the first book a try. Like you're supposed to read the second and third book, but I just didn't understand the first book enough to confidently say that I would enjoy the second or third book. Like I feel like by the end of the first book of a fantasy book, you kind of understand the world, the people, the characters, and I just didn't get it. All right, the next book on the list is The Couple Next Door. This is by Sherry LaPena. Again, sorry if I butcher any of these last names. I am quite literally the worst when it comes to pronunciating. I almost said pronunciating. I don't think that's a word. Enunciating? Pronouncing names. I don't know, just ignore me. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. It's a thriller. I don't really remember too much about this book, to be honest, because I think this was like one of the first books that I read this year, but I just remember the plot and the plot twist being kind of like like it could have been better, could have been worse, I guess. And it did drag on for a little bit. Granted, it's a pretty short book, I think. It's like barely 300 pages, so it's a really quick read, and the words are pretty big on the page, but it was just kind of like meh in my opinion. Next book I read was The Summer Proposal by V. Keeland, and I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. This was a spicy sports romance, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's a hockey romance. Forewarning, this is a very spicy book. Lots of graphic scenes, so just keep that in mind when you're picking it up if that's like not your thing. I remember it being a super, super easy read, but I feel like I heard so many people raving about this book and giving it 5 stars, and I just kind of thought it was like, I thought it was good, but I just kind of thought it was cheesy and not a 5-star read in my opinion. So I would still recommend it if you wanted like an easy sports romance read, but it wasn't anything spectacular. Next on the list is Such a Quiet Place by Megan Miranda. Looking back on this, I probably should have given this book a lower rating. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, and it was a thriller. I just thought it was like boring. I had really no interest in the ending or any of the plot twists in this book. Like I said, I think that honestly, if I were to re-rate this in Goodreads, it would be like a 2-star for me, because I didn't like it. I thought it was boring. I didn't get the storyline, and I just wasn't good. Next book I don't have, but it's called, this is a long name, so I'm just gonna read it off my phone. Influencer, Building Your Personal Brand in the Age of Social Media by Brittany Hennessy. This is a nonfiction book, hence the title, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I think that in the book there are some decent tips for personal branding and social media if you're new to the field, if you want to get started in the field. But with that being said, a lot of the information in the book is extremely outdated. Social media just moves so fast, especially like YouTube, Instagram, any of the apps really, that it's hard to write a book that wouldn't go out of date super quickly in my opinion. So she talks a lot about like YouTube and Instagram and tips for like growing in the social media world, and I just think that now the book is pretty outdated because it was written several years ago. With that being said, there are like a few tips here and there that I think that are never gonna go old, if that makes, never gonna grow old, never gonna go old, never going to I'm like forgetting how to speak, never going to, that'll always just be good tips. I think that's what I'm just trying to say, is that no matter how many changes to the social media world that there is or that there will be, some of the tips are just classic and will last forever. Next book is One Italian Summer by Rebecca Serrell. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars too. I mainly picked this book up because look how stunning the cover is. I love the cover of this book more than anything else about this book. I also picked it up because the book actually takes place in Positano, Italy, and I went to Positano for my 21st birthday when I was studying abroad in Italy, so I think this place definitely just holds a very special place in my heart. It was a very easy read. I thought the storyline was kind of weird and boring and I didn't get it, but with that being said, it's also like a really short and easy book to read, so it's not like you're wasting your time on a 500-page book that isn't good. It's like barely 250 pages, I think. So I guess if you want like a quick easy read and you want something that takes place in Europe, I would recommend this book, but I wouldn't recommend it for like a super like fascinating, amazing, capturing storyline. The next book is In 5 Years, also by Rebecca Serrell. I don't have the physical copy, but I gave this book also a 3 out of 5 stars. Oh, I also didn't mention, but the last book is a romance book. In 5 Years is also a romance book, kinda. They both are also just like basic general fiction, I think. I really think that I probably should have rated In 5 Years lower too, because I did not like that book. I don't know why I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but in the moment I guess it just felt right. The first 125 pages of this book could have been written in 25, and I think the whole book just kind of drags on. I actually think that maybe I rated it 3 out of 5 stars because I loved the ending of the book. It genuinely surprised me, and I thought it was like very, not wholesome, that's probably not the best word for it, but I just wasn't expecting it to happen, and I was pleasantly surprised by the ending, which I'm pretty sure is probably why I gave it this rating versus like a 2.5 stars. I just don't know if I'm a Rebecca Serrell girl. I haven't really enjoyed any of her books that I've read so far. Granted, they're easy reads, but everyone hypes them up so much, and I just don't know if they live up to the hype in my mind. Next book on the list is The Fine Print, which is the first book in the Dreamland Billionaire series by Lauren Asher. This is another spicy billionaire romance, emphasis on the spice, lots of spice in this book. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I just thought this book was kind of slow and it was lacking something, but I also think that I was honestly comparing it to the Twisted series by Anna Huang because I love that series and it's kind of, they have like similar tropes. My memory card just filled up, so maybe a bit of a different angle. Sorry about that. What was I saying about this book? I think I was just saying that it was slow and that I compare it to the Twisted series, and probably not a good thing to do, but I do it anyways. I don't think I will be finishing the rest of the series. I actually gave this book away just because it like wasn't for me, but it is a series if you're interested in it and you like stuff like that. Knock yourself out, but I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Next book that I read was The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This is like a thriller, borderline paranormal novel. This is probably like the most paranormal-ish novel that I've ever read. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Like I said, it's probably one of the creepiest books that I've ever read. I actually really spooked myself out starting this book by myself in my old apartment at like 11 o'clock at night. Wouldn't recommend doing that. Didn't like it. I finished the book and then immediately gave it away because I just didn't want the vibes in my apartment, and that book in my apartment, I just didn't really want to mess with it. But if you like haunted, creepy, paranormal vibes, maybe it would be good for Halloween, then you would probably enjoy the book, but I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Next book on the list is Phantom Limb by Lucinda Berry. This is a Can I speak today? This is a psychological thriller. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I love Lucinda Berry's books. If you watch my videos and you've been watching my videos for a while, I always rave about her books. She used to be a clinical psychologist, I think, so a lot of her books and a lot of her stories are based on true stories or based on her research or based on her education. They're not just made up, like they're based off of true stories, I'm pretty sure. So she's really, really, really good at writing psychological thrillers in my opinion, but this is like one of her books that it just didn't do it for me, and it was just kind of like disturbing in a lot of ways. I'm obsessed with psychology, so I found the book fascinating from a psychology perspective, but from a storyline perspective, it was a little boring, and like I said, it was just disturbing. Please look up every single trigger warning before reading this book because there are so many trigger warnings for this book. Like I said, it was pretty disturbing and weird in a lot of ways. She does know how to make a good plot twist, so if you love a good psychological thriller, plot twist type book, you would maybe enjoy it, but just go into this book with a lot of caution and do your research beforehand. Guys, we're not even halfway through and I have so many more books left on the list, so I'm gonna have to pick this up. All right, next book is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. Yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. This is a spicy small town romance. This book, reading this book just reminded me of like a Hallmark movie, but like a smutty Hallmark movie, like not one that would probably be put on television, but you get the point. I just like read it as if it was a Hallmark movie. It was cheesy. The storyline was kind of like meh, but it was also kind of cute in a way. It wasn't the best book that I've ever read, wasn't the worst book that I've ever read. Tessa Bailey actually wrote a sequel to this book called Hook, Line, and Sinker from the main character's sister's point of view, so I want to read that next, but I would recommend. I thought it was good. Don't go into this book thinking that it's going to be like the best romance book you've ever read. It was just kind of like a cheesy Hallmark, mindless type of read. Next book is An Honest Lie by Taryn Fisher. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This book, I don't really know what to categorize it as because it was like a mystery thriller cult book. I enjoyed this book despite the description on the back of the book being very, 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 very inaccurate to what the actual book was about. The back of this book leads you to believe that it's like a girls' trip, someone goes missing, yada, 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 but the majority of this book was based around like a cult storyline, which I'm just confused as to why that's not on the back of this book, but it is what it is. I still found the storyline pretty interesting and I would still recommend. I just wish that the back of the book was a little bit more accurate to what it was actually about. I thought that was just like very strange that it wasn't. And another angle change because now my battery died. How many technical issues will I have in this video? Stay tuned. Okay, next book I read was The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. I'm not quite sure how you say this. I did really like this book. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is a very classic mystery Nancy Drew type book in my opinion. It had its good moments. It had its moments that dragged on that were kind of boring that you kind of just like want to skim through, but overall I did like this book. It kind of reminds me of Nancy Drew, like I said, but like a bit more like mature version of Nancy Drew. And I probably will get around to reading the rest of this series. I don't know if it's a series or if it's just she has a collection of books that have the same main character, like literally exactly like Nancy Drew, but just a more mature version. I'm pretty sure that's how it is because the main character is like a detective. So I think that each of the books is like a different case that she solves. I would recommend if you like mystery, detective, crime type books. It was pretty interesting. It only got boring during some parts, but like I said, you can just kind of like skim through the boring parts. Next book is The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. If you have been following along my channel for a while, I went on 2 cruises this summer, so I'm really in my cruise era, and when I saw this book and it was about like a murder mystery on a cruise, I just knew that I had to pick it up. It was calling my name. I also got this for cheap at a used bookstore because it's been out for a while, so that was another plus to getting it. But it's a very, very typical murder mystery book, like classic murder mystery storyline. It kind of reminded me of the board game Clue. If you guys ever played that as a kid, I was obsessed with it, but that was kind of like the vibe that it was giving me, like whatever it was, like Mrs. Peabody did it in the dining room with the knife type of vibes. I don't even know if that's a character, but you know what I'm trying to say. So I really liked it. Well, I wouldn't say really. I liked it. It was kind of boring, but kind of good. But also, like I said, I'm in my cruise era, which is probably also why I found it fascinating. So just keep that in mind. Next book is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Please don't come at me for rating this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I know that a lot of people love this book, but I just think that some of her other books were a little better in my opinion. So I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's a classic, like, I was gonna say small town romance, but it's not small town romance because it starts in New York City but then ends in this small town, so do with that information what you will. I love Emily Henry's writing style, but I just thought that this book is more boring compared to her other books, and the storyline was just kind of missing something in my opinion. I also felt like some of the relationships between the characters were a little weird. Out of all 3 of her books, this is my least favorite. Next on the list is Hotel Nantucket by Ellen Hildebrand. This is the second book that I've ever read of hers. I read this for a book club I think that this is the perfect book club book. I didn't love this book with my entire heart. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. But I think that this is like the perfect book club book to not only read but also discuss. It's just like the perfect length. Ellen is a really good author. She writes really, really well, and I typically enjoy her writing style and her storylines and stuff like that. So it's a cute summer book. It dragged on through some parts. Some characters in the book just didn't make sense, like they just didn't need to be in there. But like I said, good book club book to discuss. And overall, I just do really like her writing style. Next book on the list is From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. This is the first Mariana Zapata book that I've ever read, but I've heard great things. I'm pretty sure she's a sports romance author because both the books that I read by her are both sports romances, just different sports. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Very typical enemies to lovers sports romance. This one in particular was centered around figure skating. I love the storyline of the book, but my only thing is that these books, her books in particular, are way too long. She writes books that are over 500 pages, and for sports romance books, I like when they're just kind of like short, sweet, to the point, and hers just kind of drag on just a smidge, so that's not my favorite, but I do like enjoy her books for like a very lighthearted, mindless read. Next book is Culty by Mariana Zapata. Another sports romance book, but this time this one was centered around soccer. Again, another 500-page book that just did not need to be that long, but I did like her writing style, and I do like the storyline of the book. Just, she needs to slim her books down just a smidge. Next book is Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. This is a thriller, 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did not guess the ending or any of the plot twists, but just wasn't a fan of the storyline. I guess I'll give a little snippet about this one. The main character is in a coma throughout the whole book, and I didn't really like that storyline. I don't like hospitals, and I don't like stuff like that, so that's my own fault for not realizing that before I picked up the book. But I just thought the coma storyline was kind of boring and I didn't like it. But I do like her other books, which we'll discuss in a minute, but this one just didn't do it for me. Next book is One of Us is Lying. I thought I had it, I don't. One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. This is a murder mystery book, 4 out of 5 stars. This is a series, and I'm pretty sure it's a young adult series. And this is like, I think, the very first book that I read in 2022, if I remember correctly. So I don't remember too much about this book, but I do know that it's a series. It's a murder mystery book. It's young adult, and I probably will continue reading the series at some point, but not anytime soon, just because I don't feel like it, and yeah, I just don't feel like it right now. Next book is The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, and the only reason it is not a 5-star read is because the first third of this book is extremely slow. Second third, power through, so good. You don't want to put the book down, but the first third of this book is just kind of like, where are we going with this, you know, that kind of thing. So that's my only critique, but other than that, I really liked it. Next book is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I can never pronounce his last name. This is actually the author of The Silent Patient, which is probably one of the most popular books ever, in my opinion, because of the insane plot twists that happened throughout that book. I read that book several years ago before it was popular because I'm just cool like that. I didn't realize that he wrote a second book not related to The Silent Patient, although some of the characters from The Silent Patient do make an appearance in this book. So I read this book and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's a psychological thriller, just like The Silent Patient. There is like a Greek mythology theme to this book, so if you don't like Greek mythology, you may not like this book. I am not super knowledgeable about Greek mythology, but it didn't deter me from wanting to read this book, and also I feel like I could still understand the book without knowing too much about Greek mythology, so that's just something to note. Next book on the list is Regretting You by Colleen Hoover, which I'm pretty sure I gave to my sister, which is why I don't have the physical copy. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's a romance book. It's the first Colleen Hoover book that I felt that was truly overhyped, in my opinion. The book was just super slow, and the ending wasn't crazy compared to her other books. Like, I feel like if you've read Colleen Hoover books, you know that a lot of her storylines are pretty crazy and like captivate you and you want to sit down and read it in an entire day. This one just didn't do that for me, and I didn't love it, so yeah, that's that. Next book is Back in the Saddle. This is the Blazing Eagle Ranch series by Peyton Banks. This is a super cheesy, spicy romance that I'm pretty sure I got for free on like a Stuff Your Kindle day. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but keep in mind, when I say cheesy, I really do mean this is a very, 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 very cheesy romance book, but it is cowboy themed, so like that's kind of cool. Not the best book I've ever read. Super cheesy, very cute second chance romance, and it only took me 3 hours to read. So if you're looking for a short book to kind of capture your attention for a short period of time, I would recommend this one. Don't go into it with high expectations. I don't know why I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think I just like really enjoyed the storyline and like the plot and how easy it was to read, so that's that. Next book is Beach Read by Emily Henry. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. This is a romance book. She only writes romance books, I'm pretty sure. Not a 5-star read for me. So sorry to everyone out there that's gonna hate me for saying that, but I thought it was overhyped. And don't get me wrong, it is a very cute summer romance and it's a fun read, but it wasn't the best book I've ever read. And I know that's like a lot of people love this book and they're like it's their #1 book that they'll ever read, but I didn't share that same opinion. But I still thought it was cute and it was a good summer romance. So if you're looking for a cute summer romance, pick it up. Next book is Watch Out for Her by Samantha Bailey. This is a thriller. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Side note, I love the cover of this book. It's like, it wants to be a hardcover, but it's actually a soft cover, and I think that that's really cool. And I love the cover of it in general. So just overall, a really good thriller with a lot of twists and turns. Really, really well written, and I didn't guess any of the plot twists. And I love when I can't guess the plot twists of books because it makes them more fun to read, so I really liked this thriller. Next is The Golden Couple by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This was another book that I just thought was overhyped in my opinion. It's a psychological thriller. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but I know so many people that have actually rated this 5 out of 5 stars, and it's been like one of their top books from 2022. I thought it was really good and it kept my attention, but not enough to give it 5 stars in my opinion. Lots of twists, lots of turns, would still recommend, but just wasn't one of my favorite books of 2022, like a lot of people said. Now we're gonna move on. I just decided to lump a whole series together. This is the Legend series. The first book is Legend. Second book is Prodigy. Third book is Champion, and then there's actually a 4th book, but I haven't read the 4th book yet. They're all by Marie Lu. Obviously, it's a series. It's a sci-fi fantasy series, and I gave them all 4 stars. It's a young adult read, so it reads like a young adult book, meaning the writing isn't very mature, but the storyline is captivating, and it's a really quick and easy read if you like are just looking to pick something up. I do plan to read the 4th book eventually. It's actually sitting in my nightstand right now. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I recently bought a Kindle, so I've been obsessed with a Kindle, and a lot of the paperbacks that I bought a while ago are on the back burner. Next book is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a romance book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Very cute book, and I loved that the book was split up with different timelines throughout the chapters. I read a few other books by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read Malibu Rising last year and I really liked it too. A lot of people also gave this book 5 stars, like they're one of their favorite books of 2022. I did think it was a really, really good book. I just wasn't like one of my favorite books of 2022. I also didn't give it 5 stars, but still really cute romance story. Like I said, I loved the different timelines and how she kind of broke up the book because I feel like it made the book go by a little bit faster. Also, let me know if you've read this book in the comments down below if you are team husband or team fiance. If you read it, then you know what I'm talking about. Next book is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I gave that book a 4 out of 5 stars. First half of the book was super slow, but the second half definitely made up for it. Definitely a book for those that are hopeless romantics, and it was really cute summer romance read, and I just really liked it. Very cute romance book and would highly recommend. Next is When She Returned by Lucinda Berry. This is a I cannot say the word psychological today. This is a psychological thriller. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The only reason that I docked this book a whole star was because I figured out the plot twist about halfway through the book, I would say. But other than that, I loved it. I liked the different POVs and the storyline. She's just a really good psychological thriller author, like I mentioned. So I always enjoy, or most of the time enjoy reading her books. Next is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. This is a nonfiction book. Gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm not a big nonfiction reader, but this is probably one of the best nonfiction books that I've ever read. In my opinion, it's more about the perspective on money and personal finances rather than advice on it, which I really liked. I also liked the psychological aspect of this and learning about how people think, which is also why I really enjoyed reading it. If you didn't know, I was a psych major in undergrad, so I find anything related to psychology super interesting, which is also why I like psychological thrillers, because I like getting the perspective of like the different people and why they do things and like all of that fun stuff. So this is a really good nonfiction book. If you're looking for a nonfiction book to pick up, I would highly recommend this one. All right, next series that we're gonna talk about, and this one's kind of interesting because I gave each of these books a different rating, but I just decided to lump them all together since they're a series. So I'll discuss each rating of each individual book. The ACOTAR series. I am obsessed with this series. I loved it so much. First book, A Court of Thorns and Roses. Very first book of the series. Also, this is by Sarah J. Maas. I'm not sure I mentioned that. It's a fantasy series. First book I gave 4 out of 5 stars. Second book, which is A Court of Mist and Fury, I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. A Court of Wing and Ruin, which is the third book in the series, I gave 5 out of 5 stars. This book is the fourth book, technically. It's more like a, what is that word for the books? A novella? It's more like a novella than anything else. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't really think it was necessary, but it was fine to read, I guess. And the last book, the fifth book, A Court of Silver Flames, 5 out of 5 stars. If you are wanting to dabble in the fantasy series world, would highly recommend the ACOTAR series. I love this series. I hope she's coming out with more books to the series because I feel like I have a lot of questions and a lot of unanswered and unfinished storylines. So I hope that this is gonna be a continued series. But if not, she also has a few other fantasy series that are different from the ACOTAR series that I want to read. So it's just part of my never-ending TBR list. Next book is The People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. This one was my favorite book that she has written so far. I liked this book more than I liked Beach Read and more than I liked, what was the other one called? Book Club? I can't remember the name, but I liked it better than the other two that she's written, probably because it had more of like a travel storyline. If you know me, you know I love to travel, so that part really intrigued me and that part I really like. Best book that she's written so far, in my opinion. Next book is The Hop by Diana Clark. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is just a general fiction book. I haven't heard anyone talk about this book. I actually read it for a book club and I would have never, ever picked this book up by myself, to be completely honest, just because the description is just not something I would normally gravitate towards, and neither is the cover. I know you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but I mean, come on, we all do it. I ended up reading this book for a book club because it was required and picked by the book club, and I'm so glad I did because this is one of my favorite reads from 2022 so far. It was so good and it's just different than what I would normally read, so would highly recommend. Go look at the description. Don't judge the book by its cover, just try it out. Also, if you need some motivation, the chapters are literally like a page long, so it's a really easy, fast read because the chapters are so short. Next book is All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I posted this book on my Instagram story, and my rating for this book sparked some controversy because a lot of people told me that this is their least favorite Colleen Hoover book, but this book made me literally sob. I never cry reading books because I can detach from them pretty easily. I could not detach from this book. I sobbed reading this book. Absolutely sobbed. So I would recommend. I liked it. One of my favorite Colleen Hoover books. Also a very short and easy read. I'm pretty sure I read it in a day. So I liked it. Sorry if you didn't, I guess. Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Sweeney. 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is a thriller. Such a good thriller. Like so good. There were so many plot twists in this book. I didn't guess a single one of them, and the ending is crazy. Like, jaw on the floor. What the heck just happened? So good. Next book is The Locked Door by Freida McFadden. This is a thriller. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved the way this book was written, and the only reason it wasn't a 5-star read was because I semi-guessed the ending, and I feel like if I can guess the ending of a thriller, it's not really worthy of 5 stars in my opinion. So I did dock it half a star just because I did kind of guess it, but I loved the way the book was written and I thought it was a really good thriller. Next book is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This is a 5 out of 5 star book. I know I mentioned earlier I read that one book by Lisa Jewell that I gave 2 stars, but this is what I was saying when I said that her books are typically good, because I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars and it was a psychological thriller. I read it as if I was watching an episode of Criminal Minds, so if you guys like Criminal Minds, SVU, CSI, like all those crime shows, you'll probably really like this book. I finished it in less than 24 hours, loved it, it was so good. November 9th by Colleen Hoover, 5 out of 5 stars, duh, romance book. I totally get the controversy with Colleen Hoover. I was actually just talking about this last night with a friend. Her books do have a lot of very sensitive topics with them, and I 100% understand when people are coming from when they say that the trigger warnings should be shared before people recommend her books. So with that being said, with any Colleen Hoover book that I am throwing out here, please read the trigger warnings before picking up the book. That way you like don't hate me for recommending them. If any of the topics do trigger you, obviously don't read them. But I love her books, most of her books. I think they're really well written, and I like that they're like easy to read and I can read them in like 24 hours typically. So I love this book. Next one is Reminders of Him. This is her newest one, I think. She actually has a book coming out in a week, or less than a week now, but I think that this is her newest one as of recently. Reminders of Him, it's a romance book. I thought the storyline was super unique. It's unlike any romance book that I've ever read, and it personally captured my attention and pulled on all of the heartstrings, so I really liked it. I gave it 5 stars. I would recommend it. I know, again, this book sparks controversy, but just look up the trigger warnings, read the description before you read any of her books, and you should be fine. Next is The Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. Don't have the physical copy because I'm letting someone borrow it, but again, another psychological thriller, 5 out of 5 stars. Definitely one of my favorite psychological thrillers of the entire year. If there's one psychological thriller that you pick from the number of books that I've just mentioned, please read this one. It is so good and insane and manipulative and just everything that you would want a psychological thriller to be. This book is that. I finished it in one sitting. I said it was one of the best books of 2022. It might be one of the best books that I've honestly ever read. It's just that good. I loved it. This book is what turned me on to Lucinda Berry, and now I just read all of her books. So I loved it. I loved it. We'll hype that book up forever. All right, next is a series, and I gave them all 5 stars, so that's why I'm sharing them all together. This is the Twisted series by Anna Huang. She's actually coming out with a new series this month as well, I think like in a week or so, so I'm excited to read that. But this is the Twisted series. We have Twisted Love, Twisted Games, Twisted Hate, and Twisted Lies. Smutty, spicy, billionaire romance. I love these books so much. And I got the like limited edition, what is it called, like the discreet covers, and they're really pretty. And I don't have a bookshelf yet, but once I get a bookshelf, you bet these are gonna be on there dead center because they're so pretty. Next book is The Best of Friends by Lucinda Berry. Are we surprised? 5 out of 5 stars, psychological thriller. She does it again, I'm telling you. You have to read her books. If you like psychological thrillers, if you like thrillers in general, just please pick up her books and then DM me and tell me your thoughts. I will be upset if you don't say that you love her, because I love her, but I'll get over it. So read her books, share your thoughts with me. I personally think they are so good. I just went through so many books, I like literally feel like I just didn't breathe for like 30 minutes. Last book that I gave 5 stars to so far this year is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This is a romance book. I loved this book, like loved this book. I think this is actually the last book that I have given 5 stars to, and I read this like a month ago. It is very similar to Every Summer After, and I've heard a lot of reviews of people saying that, but I personally thought that this was better than Every Summer After. They are very similar, but they're also very different, and they tell like a similar storyline but two different stories. I would recommend reading both, but this one was my favorite out of the two. And also look how pretty this cover is. So I think this is like the new edition cover. I don't know, I really like it. That is it. I read 58 books this year and I just shared them all with you, and the year isn't even close to being over. We have like 2 more months left, 3 more months left technically, like 2.5 or something like that. So I'm definitely going to read many more books this year, but I just figured like I read 58 books and I wanted to share them. Those are all the books I read this year. If you've read any of them, if you read any of them, feel free to comment down below, DM me on Instagram. You can comment on my TikTok, I'll respond back to that too. I feel like my brain is now mush from talking about all these books. If you're new around here, make sure to subscribe down below, give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time.